Hello, in this video we are going to discuss some important news in detail. First one is about COP28 and various outcomes under it. First outcome is fossil fuel phase out. Under this agreement, the final agreement call upon the countries to contribute toward transitioning away from fossil fuel so as to achieve net zero by 2050. But there were no schedule or targets under this agreement. Second is tripling of renewable energy. The COP28 agreement calls upon countries to work towards tripling global installed capacity of renewable energy and doubling of annual improvement in energy efficiency to tackle climate change. Third one is phase down of coal. The first time under Glasgow Conference of 2021, phase down of coal was discussed, and under COP28, the final agreement also retained the language of the Glasgow agreement, and there is nothing about how this phase down is to be measured or from what baseline. Just the term phase down of coal was discussed. Then it is about methane emission cut. The agreement talks about accelerating and substantially reducing non-carbon dioxide emissions globally, which include methane emission by 2030. Some important fact about methane. Methane is most widespread greenhouse gas apart from CO2, account for nearly 25% of all emissions. It is also 80 times more potent than CO2 in causing global warming. The final agreement under this methane emission cut does not mention any target for methane emission cut for 2030. Then the loss and damage fund. Loss and damage fund is for the poor and vulnerable countries. A decision to set up loss and damage fund was taken under last year's conference but was not created. In COP28 operationalized this fund on the opening day of the conference, and several countries made funding commitments together worth $800 million. The money is meant to help countries trying to recover from climate induced disaster. And the last one is about global goal on adaptation. About this also, Glasgow conference had decided to set up 2-year work program to define the contours of this global goal on adaptation framework. Under COP28, the identification of some common adaptation goal such as reduction in climate induced water scarcity, attaining climate resilience in food and agriculture production, and resilience against climate-induced health impacts were taken. So this was all about the COP28 and various outcomes under it. The second news is about insurance penetration levels in India. According to this report, there is no insurance cover for 95% of overall population in India, and only 13% of people have life insurance and only 27% have health insurance. The report recommended compulsory natural calamity insurance for high risk regions and also compulsory crop insurance for farmers who have taken bank loans supported by premium financing from microfinance institutions or agri input suppliers. For crop insurance, we have Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. Now we'll learn about several factors which contribute to lower insurance penetration in India. First one is lack of awareness. As in India, many people aren't aware about the importance of insurance or types of coverage available under insurance. Second factor could be affordability, as for many insurance premium might seem expensive, leading to reluctance in purchasing policies. The third factor is cultural factors. Our certain beliefs or practices may deter people from investing in insurance, viewing it as unnecessary or having other priorities. Then there are some government initiatives to increase the insurance coverage in India. First one is Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, which is a life insurance scheme. Second one is Pradhan Mantri Suraksha Bima Yojana, which is a accidental insurance scheme, and third one is Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana. It is not Bhan, it is Jan Dhan Yojana. So these are three major schemes. Now we'll discuss that what will be the benefits of increased insurance penetration. First one is financial security. Insurance coverage can provide individuals and families financial protection against unforeseen events like illness, accidents, or natural disaster, reducing the financial burden during crisis. Then second benefit will be social welfare. Improved insurance coverage ensure better healthcare access, which in turn leads to healthier communities and improved living standards. Third one is disaster resilience. High insurance penetration helps in post-disaster recovery, aiding affected individuals and regions to rebuild and recover more swiftly. Last one is long-term savings. As certain insurance policies like life insurance or retirement plans encourage long-term saving habits, ensuring financial stability in the future. And the report says the same thing, that insurance in long term will help us in fight against disaster, will make our communities more disaster resilient. So this was all about this news. The third news is about the suspension of MPs in Parliament. The first question arise here is, why MPs are suspended? The answer to this is that MPs in both houses were suspended for disrupting Parliament proceeding while protesting last week. The second is that why do MPs disrupt the Parliament? There can be 3 to 4 reasons to this. First one is that the lack of time available to MPs for raising the important matters. Second one is the unresponsive attitude of the government and retaliatory posture by Treasury bench. Third one is deliberate disruption by parties for political or publicity purpose. And the last one is the absence of prompt action against MPs disrupting the parliamentary proceeding. Now, who can suspend the MPs and how? So the answer to this question is the presiding officer, that is the speaker in Lok Sabha and the chairperson in Rajya Sabha, can suspend a MP. For suspension, first the presiding officer can direct an MP to withdraw from the house for any disorderly conduct. If that does not work, then the said MP does not work and the said MP continues to disrupt the house proceeding, the presiding officer can name the legislature. After that, the house can move a motion to suspend the MP until the end of session. So this is the basically procedure. But there is a exception to this, that in 2001, the Lok Sabha further empowered the speaker to deal with grave and disorderly conduct. As per the new rules, an MP named by the speaker shall automatically stand suspended for a period of 5 days or for the remaining part of the session. This means that for the suspension of MP in Lok Sabha, there is no need to pass a motion to suspend that MP. But in case of Rajya Sabha, this rule does not apply in case of Rajya Sabha, and there is a need to pass a motion in order to suspend an MP. Then the next question is that how long can MP be suspended for? So a member can be suspended for the maximum for the remainder of the session only. And moreover, the House at any point of time can reinstate a suspended member by passing a motion. So this is all about the suspension of MP and procedure. Here we are going to discuss one more article where the writer tries to give us a different viewpoint about the opposition MP or how we can improve the parliamentary procedure. So the writer says that an elected government's role should be to set up legislative and financial priorities, and the opposition's responsibility should be either to oppose those ideas or strengthen them by suggesting alternative or pointing out gaps. If the government does not agree with that, then opposition must respect the will of the people. But what happens in our parliamentary system does not provide adequate space for opposition parties in parliament. They can suggest and demand the raising of specific issues in the legislature, but it is up to the government whether to accept them or not. For this, the writer provides a solution. For parliament to work effectively, penalizing MP will not be enough. It will require a change in the procedure so that the opposition can set the agenda for the debate in the two houses. Currently, only private members get 2.5 hours every Friday to discuss important legislative and policy issues. However, there is no mechanism where a group of MPs can require that a specific discussion take place in a parliament, and the only mechanism available to them is to force a debate is through a non-confidence motion. Perhaps it is time for parliament thought about incorporating specific days for opposition in its calendar sitting. Like the House of Commons, these days could be reserved for deliberating on the issues that opposition consider importance. Basically, the crux can be said that the writer says that opposition members are protesting because they are not getting enough time to raise the important issue. Like in this case, the opposition is demanding a statement from Home Minister on the Parliament security breach. And for this, most of them are protesting or shouting in the Parliament as they are not being heard, and the Treasury bench decided to suspend all these members. Now here we read a term, that is private member bill. What is that mean? Private member bill is a bill introduced by any MP who is not a minister. Other than a minister, if a parliament member introduced a bill, then it will be known as private member bill, and this bill can only be introduced on Friday. These are two important facts about private member bill. So that's all for this video. Thank you.